there's a vertebra. There we go. All right. Minnie is time to go. It's Minnie's time to go. All right, finish this one up right now. Good boy. Girl. Dog. All right. Should have did this before he was already attached, but that's okay. The question is, do I want to put eyes in him? Kinda do, kinda don't. Let's get him stitched up first. See how he looks with his neck backwards supposed to be. Alright, what are we listening to? Like, I'm tempted for the Wendigo one. Let's see what else he's got. I want to save that for October. Playlists. Ooh, wait. The Complete Cthulhu Mythos. I don't know if any of these are any good. Warlock and Witches. Let's see what this one looks like. Yeah, I know.
The Creeper in Darkness by Frank Belknap Long. Familiar, the tiny demoniac attendant of a witch or warlock. Crabbe's English Dictionary. It was a very old house indeed. Dale Elliot, notebook in hand, ice blue eyes intently absorbed, moved almost reverently over the dust-strewn floor, stopping here and there to examine articles of furniture which dated back to the late 17th century. Some pieces even antedated this. Dale Elliot was a professional antiquarian. He lived and breathed and had his being in the past. His emotions were so completely out of harmony with the modern world that he frightened people. All men have roots deep in the past, and when Dale Elliot talked, he brought the past to life. There was something ghostly about him. He seemed to have stepped from the past into the present, a frozen swimmer emerging from the river of time near its dim beginnings, with the hoary foam of centuries clinging to his garments. But in this old witch house, Dale Elliot was in his element. The witch house had been converted into a museum for the edification of summer tourists.
Hello again. How are you tonight?
The third oldest house in Salem, and it stood on a high, windswept bluff overlooking Salem Harbor. It did not attract tourists as the House of Seven Gables did. It was a drab, squat little house with a gambrel roof that did not jut out as gambrel roofs should. Bleakly, it faced the harbor, presenting to the town merely a windowless expanse of weather-eroded wood, which impressed antiquarians, but left normal people cold. Dale Elliot was in all respects the exact opposite of a normal person. He moved about in a kind of trance, examining objects which were unique in the annals of Salem. A spinning wheel which had once belonged to a notorious witch, a dog-eared prayer book annotated in the curious cramped calligraphy of the Reverend Increase Mather, dour son of a grim and relentless father, dour father of a son who had left red thumbprints on the the darkest pages of New England history. All of the treasured antiques were roped off, but Elliot was contemptuous of the "do not touch" signs scattered about the room. When he saw an object which attracted him, he approached it, crept under the ropes, and examined it with his hands. He liked the feel of old things. Now, he was examining a cabinet of drawers which stood under
Okay,
a
you bastard.
window
Oh,
on the
fuck
north
you.
side of the room, examining it all over, running his hands over it in critical appraisal, and even pulling the drawers in and out as he crouched in the gloom. Too bad, he murmured. The panels are badly warped. He was tugging at the lowermost drawer and balancing himself precariously on his instep when the little figure emerged. It emerged so unobtrusively that he did not notice it until it was standing almost directly beneath his hand, blinking up at him in the dim yellow light which suffused the ancient room weirdly. The figure was scarcely 3 inches in height, a tiny, shriveled human baroque with pointed ears and a thin, hairy tail. Peaked and dun-colored, it stood very still on the top of the cabinet,
Damn it.
stared malignly
I
up
knew
at
better.
its tiny face repulsively puckered, its shoulders hunched and misshapen. Elliot's flesh congealed. Instinctively, he retreated a pace, his pupils dilating, his breath hissing from between his teeth. "Do not be alarmed, Dale Elliot," shrilled the little horror. "I am your familiar. I have waited here for you throughout the years." "Familiar?" gasped Elliot, his face corpse white. "Yes, your family familiar. Your great-great-grandfather was a member of a coven in good standing. I attached myself to all of your ancestors. You were born in this house. Don't you remember, Dale Elliot?" Elliot passed a trembling hand across his brow. "I knew that I was born in Salem," he said, "but I did not remember the house. My mother died when I was a child. I was brought up by relatives in Boston." The little figure nodded grimly. "Well, Dale, we're together again. I remember you as an infant, rosy-cheeked, smiling, but with a mark of his satanic majesty already upon you." "You mean my ancestors were witches?" Elliot asked in a small voice. The figure nodded. "Yes, Dale, witches and warlocks. Your entire family attached themselves to his satanic majesty far back in the 17th century." Before Elliot could protest or cry out, the little figure leaped upon him. Tiny, claw-like hands fastened on his clothes and clung. With a cry, Elliot staggered back across the room, his fingers clutching at his chest. The little horror was burrowing under his shirt when the guard rushed angrily into the room. The guard was a big, heavy-set man of Portuguese extraction, dressed in summer linens. "Look here, sir," he exclaimed. "You can't yell like that in here. This is a private house which is only open for antiquarians." Elliot did not reply. He was backed up against the wall, his fingers clawing at his chest. The little figure was burrowing into his flesh. He could feel it squirming about under his clothes. The guard said, "Drunk, eh? A fine thing. And you, a grown man." He jerked a thumb toward the doorway of the room. "Out," he said. "If you don't get out under your own steam, I'll help you out." Elliot got out. He staggered blindly out of the room and down a winding flight of stairs to the street. The sunlight was clear and bright over Salem when he emerged on the high, windswept hill overlooking the harbor. But when he reached his lodgings a half-mile away, the sun, westering, was spilling down like blood, splashingly ensanguining the gambrel roofs and red-brick chimney pots of the old houses and turning the waters of Salem Harbor a deep, rosy pink. Elliot's room was on the top floor of a 3-story frame house on a winding waterfront street where hollyhocks bloomed. He was trembling uncontrollably when he crossed a well-kept lawn and ascended a porch which creaked beneath his tread. His blue eyes a mixture of stupefaction and terror, he fumbled for his keys, let himself into the house, and mounted 3 flights of stairs to his attic room. He locked the door of the room before he crossed to the window and sat down on a narrow, cot-like bed. He sat down on the edge of the bed and removed his coat. He was wearing a soft linen shirt and black bow tie. He ripped off the tie, unbuttoned the shirt and removed it, ripped off his undershirt. The little Baroque was clinging to his chest. Its tiny hands were buried wrist-deep in his flesh. All about it there was a glistening crimson circle, a halo of bright blood. For an instant, he stared down in silence at the tiny, shriveled form. So great were his horror and revulsion that for an instant the room swayed about him. For an instant, he thought he was going to faint. The tiny shape was staring maliciously up at him in the red sunlight which poured in through the open window, crimsoning the sheets of the bed. From its narrow, sloping skull, two tiny black horns sprouted. In the dim light of the old house, Elliot had failed to notice the horns. Utter horror engulfed him as he stared. The little Baroque said, "It will take 3 days. When I have firmly attached myself, I will never leave you." Elliot spoke to it then. He scarcely recognized his own voice. It seemed like a whisper from the grave. "You mean your hands will grow into my flesh?" "Yes, Dale. The wounds will heal and your flesh will become coven flesh, and will obey the commands of his satanic majesty. See, I have made grooves for my hands. Eventually the wounds will heal." The little horror leaped suddenly from his chest to the sun-reddened windowsill, and stood perilously poised in the crimson glow, mocking him. The 2 deep grooves, where its hands had rested, were welling redly. The little Baroque said, "Night is falling. I must sleep." Elliot went perfectly white, and the little horror leaped back upon him, inserted its hands into the encrimsoned grooves, and coiled up in an attitude of repose. "Sleep, Dale," it murmured, as its eyelids flickered shut. "You will not resent me so much tomorrow, and in the months and years to come, you will not resent me at all." How Elliot passed the night he never knew. His thoughts were feverish, delirious. He twisted and turned, a dark ferment in his brain. Twisted and turned until the dawn broke in the east, inside the window of his room. When he awoke, sunlight was flooding the attic room. A confused and merciful forgetfulness pervaded his faculties. Slowly, his drowsy eyes took in the familiar contours of the room. The sloping rafters of the ceiling that came to a triangular focus high above his head. The oaken chest where his clothes lay. A dresser with a photograph of his mother, and a brush, comb, and hand mirror familiarly arranged upon it. Then he glanced down at the sheet which covered him, and the horror came rushing back, filling him with unutterable terror and loathing. Across the white sheet there stretched a long trail of tiny, bloody footprints. With a despairing cry, he threw the sheets off and glanced down at his naked torso. The little shape was stirring restlessly in his flesh. Suddenly, it opened its eyes and stared up at him. "Good morning, Dale," it said. He made no attempt to dislodge it. He could not bring himself to touch it. Shaking in every limb, he arose from the bed and put on his clothes. He dressed swiftly, while the little horror mocked him. The wounds in Elliot's flesh were of a deep, violaceous hue. The blood had darkened, coagulated. Slowly, the little malign Baroque withdrew its hands and leaped to the windowsill. It watched mockingly while Elliot struggled into his shirt and drew on his coat. The big clock in the hall outside was ticking slowly when Elliot descended the stairs to the street. The little horror was squirming in his flesh again, twisting about restlessly under his shirt. Elliot usually glanced at the morning paper before he let himself out, but now he simply pulled the paper from beneath the door and stuffed it in his coat pocket, going down the steps of the porch and crossing the lawn with the swaying gait of a drunken man. His one thought was to escape from the horror by seeking the companionship of normal people. To escape for an
Don't go to church or anything.
Mingling with normal men and women. Perhaps it was all
Don't seek help. Don't read a book.
Perhaps he was entirely mad. He must find out. When he arrived at the little restaurant where he usually had breakfast, he had reached a momentous decision. He would enter the restaurant, sit down, and tear the horror from his flesh. He would expose it to the gaze of the people about him. He had to share the horror. It was driving him mad. At the little restaurant where he usually had breakfast, he would meet people he knew. Kindly, sympathetic people. He must find out. The restaurant was less crowded than usual. Unsteadily, he crossed to a table in a far corner, picked up a menu, and glanced furtively about him. None of his acquaintances was having breakfast at the restaurant this morning. The people who were sitting there were complete strangers to him. Nevertheless, he was determined to bring the horror into view. He could imagine what they would say. God, what a ghastly thing. What can it be? It's like a little man. He could see the patrons of the restaurant rising in sudden terror, upsetting their coffee cups, sending plates crashing to the floor. But he had to have human sympathy and understanding. He had to know. He was fumbling with the buttons of his shirt. He heard the man at the adjoining table say, "No, they can't explain it. He was found in his shop with his head bitten off, chewed off. The medical examiner said it looked like a rat had chewed with the flesh of its throat." There were two men. Now the second man was speaking, and they found little red footprints all over the shop. Human footprints, 1/10 of an inch in length. Now that's a puzzler for you. "Ghastly," said the first man. He raised a cup of coffee to his lips. Elliot saw his Adam's apple rise and fall, rise and fall. He was drinking all the scalding coffee at a single draught, as though the scalding horror in his mind was so unbearable that he had to scald his throat to keep from thinking of it. "Suppose we talk about something else," said the second man. "Yeah, let's. It's in the papers anyway. We can read about it later on." With trembling fingers, Elliot ripped the Salem Morning Chronicle from his pocket and spread it out on the table before him. The headlines fairly screamed at him, "Antiquarian found murdered," and in smaller type beneath, "Joseph Taylor, prominent antiquarian of the city, was found gruesomely murdered this morning in his antique shop at 13 Elm Street. Mr. Taylor, who has living quarters at the rear of the shop, was found at 2 a.m. by..." Elliot rose from the table, choking, his face livid. He staggered out of the restaurant into the blinding sunlight. The sunlight smote his eyes, dazzling and half blinding him. Indifferent to the glare, clutching at his throat, he reeled drunkenly down the street. Disturbed by his reeling gait, the little Baroque crept from beneath his shirt and stared coldly up at him. "Well, what is the matter now? What is the matter with you, Dale Elliot?" "You killed him," Elliot choked. "Joseph Taylor, my friend. Yesterday afternoon when I left his shop, he was alive and well." The little Baroque shrilled. "Yes, I know. You were furiously angry with him when you left the shop. He tried to cheat you. He attempted to sell you a spurious antique. You swore to get even with him, Dale. But I didn't really mean it," Elliot choked. "I didn't know. Dale, listen to me. I killed him because you hated him. I am your faithful familiar. A familiar is pledged to execute its master's wishes. All wizards, magicians, and warlocks have evil wishes." Elliot screamed, "You murderous little devil!" His fingers went out and raked across his chest. Agilely, the little horror leaped aside, climbed to Elliot's shoulder, where it leered up into his face in blind derision. "Of course I am a devil. A demon, a little devil." Elliot groaned. "I will crush you to death. I will strangle you with my hands. The little shape shrilled. Do not destroy me, Dale. I would slip from your grasp. I am elastic, indestructible. Then I will destroy myself. No, Dale. I will grow into your flesh, and you will cease to hate me. The child ran so swiftly past him that Elliot did not at first realize that he was not alone with the horror on the sun-dappled pavement. He did not know that a little girl on her way to school had been watching him with wide, wondering eyes, and had now run swiftly by. The child had seen the little figure perched on his shoulder and was running screaming away from him, her school books clutched tightly in her arms, her pigtails flying. Suddenly, she dashed out into the street. Elliot was so immersed in horror that he saw the child merely as a white blur moving swiftly through the sunlight. The street climbed steeply to a bluff overlooking the bay. The child was running up the street, but the automobile was coming down. It was coming down with a screeching of brakes, and although the man in the car was trying desperately to avoid running down the child, he had seen her too late to swerve aside. The screeching brakes jarred Elliot from his daze. His vision cleared. He saw the child clearly, saw the careening car. The car was less than 20 feet from the running child when he leaped with a cry from the pavement. He leaped toward the child and gave her a violent push, sending her sprawling across the street to safety. The car was traveling at 30 miles when it struck him. It smashed into him and hurled him 30 feet through the air. With a grinding scream, it jolted to a halt, turning completely about on the steep gradient. Elliot thudded to the pavement and lay still, blood trickling from his face. Sobbing with terror, the child picked herself up, stared at the little form that was running from Elliot's sprawling body across the pavement. 3 feet from the curb, the fleeing Baroque staggered, swayed. Its tiny hands went to his throat. It screamed in shrill agony. It whirled about like a top. Then it tottered sideways and collapsed in a heap in the dust of the gutter. When he who had nearly run down the child emerged white-lipped and trembling from the car, the little shape was as unmoving as Elliot's big bulk spread out on the pavement. Elliot awoke in a world of whiteness. He was lying on a soft mattress between white sheets, and the walls of the room were white, and so was the ceiling above him. When he moved, white-hot shafts of searing pain shot through him. The girl, who was bending above him and smiling down at him, was dressed entirely in white. She laid a soft white hand on his forehead. "You must rest now," she said. "You must get some sleep. You've been unconscious for hours." Who are you?" gasped Elliot. "And where? "You're in the Salem General Hospital," said the girl. "I am your night nurse." "But what happened?" "You were struck by an automobile this morning. You saved the life of a little girl." Elliot remembered then. He started so violently that the nurse was compelled to admonish him. "You must try not to think about that. Later, if you wish, but not now. You must get some sleep." Elliot groaned. "Sleep? Sleep? How can I rest when that little monster—" The girl said, "You mean your good luck piece? We've all been admiring it. You haven't lost it. It is quite safe. They found it in the dust of the roadway, a few feet from where you were lying." Elliot stared at her, white-lipped. "What do you mean? What did you find?" The girl smiled and left him. When she returned, she was holding a small, flat object that glittered in the palm of her hand. "Here it is," she said. "Would you like it near you?" Tremulously, Elliot took the little Baroque. It was cold and metallic and very flat now, a tiny, rigid figurine of bronze. The nurse said, "What an ugly little horror. Wherever did you get it? I have seen some unusual good luck charms. My uncle collects them. But this little bronze is unique. I've never seen a duplicate." She smiled. "It is a little too large to wear on a watch chain. You just carry it loose in your pocket, I suppose. It certainly brought you luck this morning." Elliot remembered then. Remembered a passage from an old book which he had read somewhere in the course of his antiquarian browsings and witchcraft studies. Even warlocks may be saved. Even witches and black sorcerers. By heroism and sacrifice and repentance may warlocks be saved. And each demon that cannot abide goodness will shrivel and become as bronze, forsaking its warlock when its warlock forsakes the evil one, dying in agony, shriveling and dying. Elliot's eyes were shining strangely when he took the nurse's hand and deposited the little metallic figure on her palm. "You say your uncle collects charms?" The girl nodded. "Then give this to him with my blessings." The nurse gasped. You don't want it?" Elliot smiled wanly. "I never want to see it again," he said. "I've lived too long among antiques. I shall live henceforth among people, talk with them, laugh with them, work with them. Yes, people are better than antiques. People are best."
Hurry up and cool down, Jesus.
If you enjoyed listening today, be sure to subscribe to the channel by hitting the red subscribe button below.
God,
After
this is
doing
taking
so,
forever to set
click
up.
the bell icon next to the subscribe button to receive new content notifications. If you'd like to support our work and receive exclusive perks, consider becoming a channel member by clicking the join button below. To support us in other ways, see the video description for links to our Bandcamp and Patreon pages, our merch store over at Teespring, and further information relating to our releases on Audible, iTunes, and Spotify. And until next time.
I hate waiting for shit to dry. It's over there.
You fool! Warren is dead. Welcome to Horror Babble. Today I'm back with a classic work by Phyllis A. Whitney, The Silver Bullet. This one was published in Weird Tales back in February of 1935, described as an eldritch tale of horror, of a terrible adventure on Loon Mountain, and a talisman that was potent in the old days against witches and warlocks. We hope you enjoy this one, folks. The Silver Bullet by Phyllis A. Whitney. 1. Fog writhed up from the hollow of Loon Valley and crawled thick and yellow before the headlights of the car. Ramsey's hands tightened on the wheel as he swung away from destruction and back onto the muddy, unseen road. He glanced once at the white-lipped woman beside him and then gave his attention to the obscurity that whirled beneath the wheels of the car. "We can't go on," he said at last. "It's impossible to see the road. I can't risk it." From the corner of his eye, he could see the convulsive movement of the woman's hands in her lap. "Linda," he warned. Again, her hands twitched. "It's this beastly fog. It has a slimy feel against my face, as though I'd been touched by a slug. We must go on, Gordon." Quietly, he applied the brakes. He could feel the sucking of the tires as the car came to a halt in the mud. The woman gave a little moan of despair and sank back in her seat. He watched her for a moment in silence, trying to recall MacDonald's exact words. How had the doctor put it? That if ever she were to overcome her strangeness, These whims of Linda's must not go unchallenged. My dear, he said, we've come here to help you, to hunt back to the very beginnings of your life and lay them in the open. Once we've discovered the reason, the origin of these nervous spells, we can exorcise them, and you'll be well again. Exorcise, she repeated. What a horrible word, as though I were possessed by devils. She laughed with a faint note of hysteria in her voice, only to break off as the sound struck flatly against the crawling wall of fog. Ramsay lowered the window beside her and stared into the writhing
Just pop on.
darkness. Look, he cried, suddenly eager. I do believe we're near a house. Isn't that a light?
There we go.
The fog thinned, and drew aside its heavy folds, and then rolled soundlessly back upon its tracks again. In the instant of clearing, however, the light had been visible, a square, dim eye in the mountain above them. We'll go there, he said, and ask for directions. Perhaps we can find a place to camp for the night. Linda sat motionless as he got out and went around the car to open her door. We shouldn't have come, Gordon. My mother must have had some terrible reason for sending me away from Loon Mountain with strangers when I was a baby. There's something revolting about the very name of the place, Loon Mountain. I've said it over and over to myself until it begins to sound like the words of an idiot. Ramsay took her arm impatiently. These fantasies of his wife's were beyond the understanding of his own practical mind. He knew only that he must follow MacDonald's directions and get to the bottom of the thing. Brambles caught at their ankles as they struggled toward the light, and once a fog-wet branch slapped across their cheeks. It is slimy, Linda said, wiping the moisture from her face with a quick gesture of disgust. The eye grew larger as they stumbled up the hillside, and they were able to discern the wavering black outline of a building through the fog. Two pointed gables pierced the night like the pricked ears of a wolf, while across the entire front stretched a ramshackle veranda, its cracked palings forming an eerie and broken-toothed grin. Ramsay lifted his fist to the door, and at the first echo of his knock, the gleaming eye of the window was wiped from existence, leaving the night darker than before. There was a faint, clicking sound from the room beyond, and although he could see nothing, the man received the strange impression of a human eye staring at him through a knothole in the door. Linda's hand lay heavily upon his arm. "Come away," she whispered. But even as she spoke, a light reappeared at the window, and the door was pulled inward, leaving the two upon its threshold blinking in the flood of light. A woman stood in the opening with her back to the illumination, so that her face and the details of her person were invisible. "What do you want?" she asked in a voice which, heard there on the lonely mountainside, seemed possessed of an odd, metallic beauty. "The fog made it unsafe for driving," Ramsay said. "We were bound for Loon Mountain, the town on Loon Mountain." "This is Loon Mountain," the woman told him, continuing to stand uninvitingly in the doorway. "But the town is 5 miles down the road." 5 miles, Ramsay echoed. "It might as well be 100 in weather like this. There's a sheer precipice on the left of the road. My wife is nervous." He could see the turning of the woman's body as she moved her eyes. Apparently, she was looking at Linda for the first time. "Come in," she said, stepping abruptly back into the room. The words were more a command than an invitation. Linda obeyed, and Ramsay followed his wife through the doorway. Immediately, their hostess flung the door shut behind them, and Ramsay experienced an odd sense of relief, as if for the first time since they had begun the upward journey from the valley, they had truly escaped the groping fog fingers. The woman had crossed the bare floor of the room and was standing beside a deal table, her hands fumbling at a kerosene lamp. She presented a somewhat startling figure to Ramsay's city-accustomed eyes. Her dress was of a heavy dark material, sack-like and without style or shape, while about her hair was wound in coil after night-black coil, smooth and gleaming as satin. Even as he considered her, she turned from the lamp, and he was able to view for the first time the utter, wild beauty of her face. An alarming beauty that sent his eyes shifting hurriedly to Linda's own dusky, more passive loveliness. It was a relief to see Linda's yellow, modern little sport dress, her tinted fingernails, and the yellow felt hat pulled down upon her dark waves of hair. She seemed so entirely sane and as far removed from this strange, black-clad creature as the sunshine of noonday was from midnight. Linda, too, had felt the spell of the other's beauty. She was staring with velvet dark eyes that seemed abnormally large, and the whiteness of her face. "Now that we know just how far the town is," she said hesitantly, "perhaps we'd better go on. We can travel slowly, and there will probably be a hotel." "You can stay here," the woman offered. "This used to be a hotel. We still take people in now and then." Ramsay accepted quickly, grateful enough to postpone the journey along the mountainside. Without further speech, the woman opened a drawer in the table and drew out a candle which she set in a grease-spattered holder. She had just lighted a match and was bringing it near the wick when, somewhere behind Ramsay, a door was opened. Under ordinary circumstances, he would have turned at once to view the newcomer. But something in the utter quiet of the woman in black held his attention. It was as though all power of motion had been drained from her body at the sound of that opening door. She stood with the candle in one hand and the burning match in the other, and made no effort to bring the two together. There was something horrid in her frozen immobility. Ramsay watched in fascination, while the match burned nearer and nearer her fingers. Surely it was singeing her skin. And then, when he was sure that the smell of burning flesh had risen in the room, the tension snapped, and with a quick
Doing all right. Cutting the face off Minnie Mouse at the moment.
flick of her hand, the match was extinguished and hurled to the floor. She turned and faced the door, and Ramsay turned also, finding his will suddenly freed. Framed against the blackness of the corridor behind him stood a man, a tall, spare individual with darkly yellowed skin, inky hair, and the most curious eyes Ramsay had ever seen. They possessed a flickering, greenish flatness and moved not at all in their sockets, but stared straight ahead while a strange shimmer, like the flutter of green moonlight on water, went on in their depths. The woman in black moved quickly across the room, threw out a long, slim-fingered hand, and shut the door abruptly in that staring face. Then, with no word of explanation, she returned to the lighting of her candle. Ramsay found himself listening tensely for departing footsteps beyond the door. But there came no sound. Was the fellow still standing there, with his flickering eyes fixed upon the closed door, like the eyes of a corpse upon the lid of its coffin? God, what a terrible thought. Was this night going to leave him as nervous and fanciful as Linda? "I'll fetch our bags from the car," he muttered, and went reluctantly back to the fog. When he returned, the woman was awaiting him with her candle ready. She crossed to the door leading into the corridor, and it seemed to Ramsay that she hesitated for the merest instant before flinging it open. When she did so, the long hallway stretched empty and dark into the far reaches of the house. Linda followed the moving candle, stopping once to look back at Ramsay, her eyes glittering too brightly in the flicker of light. At the end of the door-lined corridor, a staircase presented itself to view, steep and narrow, with steps that creaked beneath the weight of their mounting feet. Again, there was a corridor to traverse, and again there were closed doors.
Just a second. No, there's nobody in here anyway. Well, there's 7 of you. Well, technically, so. So, Alright. Nope, that's not it.
On every side. What was there about a closed door, Ramsay thought, to give him this sense of hidden evil? After all, the many rooms must be vacant, disused, harboring only dust and echoes, and perhaps a stray rat or two. He was relieved, however, when they came to a halt. The hostess took a key from the pocket of her sack-like dress and fitted it to the keyhole of the last door. It screeched rustily in the lock, and the door swung inward. The room was large, with a bare expanse of dark floor. There were 2 iron bedsteads from which the dirty white paint had peeled in layers. 1 chair, a rickety washstand bearing a white bowl and cracked pitcher, and, as Ramsay saw with relief, a second kerosene lamp. With the lamp burning, the place seemed more habitable. The hostess departed for bedclothes and hot water, and Linda drew off her felt hat with a weary gesture and laid it on the chair. "My head feels so tired," she said. "So heavy." Ramsay opened the 2 traveling bags, while Linda slipped out of her sport jacket, leaving her arms bare in the sleeveless jumper beneath. Automatically, Ramsay's eyes sought her left shoulder. He had learned that the odd little birthmark in the shape of an inverted cross was a gauge by which he could reckon the depth of her emotion. When she was happy, calm, the mark was a pale rose, scarcely to be discerned against the smooth skin of her shoulder. It was not pale now, but glowed in a deep vermilion blush. He was suddenly conscience-stricken. "Linda," he said, "if it means so much to you, we can go on even now. If this house frightens you, we won't stay."
Too late, man.
She looked at him almost listlessly and began plucking at the pins that bound up her heavy, dark hair. "It's too late now." Her voice was without emotion, and she stared at him for a second as if at a stranger. "Don't you understand? It's too late." The mark on her shoulder flushed to an angrier scarlet. She snatched the hairbrush from her bag and began to brush her hair vigorously, so that it covered her shoulders in a thick mantle and began to gleam with a life of its own. A knock upon the door bespoke the return of their hostess. She came into the room, her arms laden, and then paused to stare at Linda. "Your hair," she said in a low, startled voice. Linda's brushing hand went steadily on. "Yes, my hair. It's very beautiful, smooth and sleek." "Like yours?" asked Linda softly. It seemed to Ramsay in that instant that a strange look of understanding passed between the two. Then the woman in black shook her head vaguely and turned toward the beds. There was a long silence while she worked. When she had completed her task, she took a key from her pocket and laid it upon the washstand. "For the door," she said to Ramsay, "you may want to lock it tonight." She turned to go, but something in the sheen of Linda's hair seemed to fascinate her, so that she paused to lift a long strand in her fingers, revealing the bare shoulder beneath, where the crimson mark burned against the flesh. The woman's eyes widened. Her slender fingers clutched convulsively about the strand of hair, then let it slip away from her touch. "You mustn't stay here," she gasped. "You must go at once." "What do you mean?" Ramsay asked, more startled than he cared to admit. The woman turned, her black eyes blazing. "Fool to bring her here. You must go quickly, now." Strangely enough, it was Linda who remained calm. It wouldn't be any use to go now. It's too late. The woman's head with its heavy bands of hair drooped in submission. Then her fingers sought again for the pocket of her dress, and she drew forth a small object that shimmered in the light. She pressed the thing into Linda's hand. "I've been keeping this for a long time, but I've never dared use it. Perhaps you will have more courage than I." She was gone quickly, leaving Linda standing in the middle of the room, staring at the small, silvery thing in her hand. What is it? Ramsay asked. What was she talking about? Linda began to laugh with the old trace of hysteria in her voice. It's fantastic. Idiotic. A silver bullet. Do you see? Extending her palm to Ramsay. A silver bullet. What? He began, but she broke in upon him, her voice lowered to a whisper. Don't you know? Fine silver witches. Her laughter rose shrill. She threw one arm about her shoulders and clapped a hand to her mouth. I won't have you uttering such nonsense. She broke away from his grip with a strength that surprised him. You should be reassured, she cried mockingly. You see, I'm not a witch. If I were, the very touch of silver would burn me. But it doesn't. I can hold it in my hand, like this. Yes, he said soothingly. Of course you can. Gradually, her excitement subsided. Her body drooped like that of a weary child. Tears came into her eyes. She was very light in his arms as he carried her to the bed. It isn't true, she whispered. Tell me it isn't true. I mean, there aren't any witches. There couldn't be, because they burn them all in Salem. Hush, he said. There never were any witches except in fairy tales. Long after she had slipped into the soft, cool silk of her nightgown, he sat beside her bed, waiting for her to fall asleep. She had thrust the silver bullet beneath her pillow, and its presence seemed to comfort her. Her eyelids ceased to flutter, and after a time, she slept. 2. Ramsay quietly locked the door. Then he walked to the one window and endeavored to peer into the night. Fog curled to the very sill, obscuring the mountainside. There was to be no sleep for him, he knew, as he sat down on his cot to watch and wait for dawn. Once daylight came, they would be on their way, out of this terrible Loon Mountain region with its unreal inhabitants and insane talk of witchcraft, away from that strangely beautiful woman and the mad, ghastly creature who had stared through the doorway downstairs. He wished he could erase memory of the flat, showing gaze of the man whose eyes did look a short a while before. Or was it a short while? Somehow the sense of time was vanishing. All memory, all recollection seemed to consist of two flat-surfaced eyes that stared hypnotically, stared and flickered like some noiseless measure of time. He blinked and shrugged his shoulders violently. He must stop thinking of those eyes. He must forget them, think about his surroundings, about Linda. He froze into sudden, terror-stricken immobility. The lamp, the kerosene lamp, it was out, but he did not remember its going. A grey streak of light had begun to crawl through the window, the open window, and it was dawn. He started up from the cot, Linda's name on his lips, and then he saw. Linda's bed was tumbled. The pillow bore the mark of her head, but Linda herself was gone. He strode to the window and looked out upon the grey and ghostly morning. The fog had cleared a little, but it still lay in wreaths upon the drab shrubbery. The explanation of Linda's going was apparent. What a fool he had been not to examine the window more closely last night. The room was located at the back of the house, and the window opened immediately upon a narrow veranda, which in turn could be reached by an easy swing from the sloping side of the hill. Out of that window, Linda had been spirited while he had sat blindly upon his bed, dreaming of a strange green gaze. He turned from the window and rushed across to the locked door. The rusty key defied him, only to give suddenly before the force of his twisting fingers. The corridor beyond was silent and filled with night. He gave no thought now to closed doors, but stumbled to the stairway, whose steps shrieked beneath the weight of his plunging feet. The large room at the front of the house was empty. He turned back through the corridors, shouting now, waking long-dead echoes with his strident voice. Every moment, He expected to see a door open upon the banded head and black-garbed figure of the woman who had admitted him the night before. But no door opened, and when the last echo had died away, only a heavy silence came down upon the house. The silence was more terrible than all the tumult that had gone before. He fought against it, trying the doors systematically, banging upon their panels. But the echoes had a tired sound, as though they longed to creep back to their crevices and sleep again through undisturbed years. Every door was locked, and the corridors, graying now in the dawnlight, gave back only emptiness to his cries. In the end, he gave up and returned to the room where Linda had slept. Perhaps, after all, this was only some terrible nightmare from which he would awake at any moment. Perhaps he would find Linda in her place beneath the bedclothes, her hair dusky against the white pillow. But the room was as empty as the rest of the house. He sat down upon the one chair and buried his head in his hands, trying to force sanity into his benumbed brain. After a time, he heard a sound that brought him erect and tense, the sound of footsteps on the porch below, the grating of a key in a lock. He was out of the room and down the stairway in an instant. The bare front room had a human occupant this time, and he found himself exchanging stares with a little, straight-backed old man who gazed at him in astonishment. "Well," the fellow drawled after a moment, "and how did you get in here?" "I was let in. We took a room for the night, my wife and I, and now my wife has—" The little man tugged at his gray-peppered beard. "Slow up a bit, stranger. Who let you in?" "Why, the woman who keeps the place. She—" The old man shook his head. "There ain't no woman who keeps this place. I keep it. But I'm only a sort of caretaker. Nobody lives here anymore." "Do you think I'm mad?" Ramsay shouted. "I tell you, a woman let us in last night. And now my wife's disappeared. I've got to find her. If you've really lost somebody, I'll try and help you. My name's Samuels. And if you'll go ahead and give me the whole story without getting too excited about it, we'll see what we can do." How he got through that day, Ramsay never knew. He told his story to a dozen apathetic men of the countryside. Each one shook his head in apparent doubt as to the teller's sanity. There was no such woman as described on Loon Mountain. There was no one who could possibly have let him into the house. Some doubt was expressed as to the existence of Linda, until Ramsay brought down the yellow sport dress and shook it before their puzzled eyes. Finally, a search party was organized and sent out to scour the mountain. Ramsay remained behind. He had the strange feeling that somehow Linda might come back of her own accord, and she must not return to find him gone. It was not until early evening that Samuels reappeared. He came into the room with a certain hesitancy in his step. I guess we found her," he said, his bleared old eyes avoiding Ramsay's. "There's a gravel pit up yonder on the mountain." "Where is she?" Ramsay cried, shaking the man's shoulder. "Don't be in a hurry, son. It's too late for hurry now." The significance of his words began to make itself felt. "What do you mean? She's not hurt." "I hate to tell you, son. We found her at the bottom of the pit. Her neck's broken, I guess." Ramsay could only stare in horror. This was a nightmare. Why, only last night he and Linda... His eyes moved in slow fascination toward the veranda and the steps. It was true, then. They were bringing her in now. His Linda. Her head was twisted terribly so that the black coils of her hair hung across her face and dripped toward the floor. The soft silk of her gown was muddied and torn, and against the dead white skin of her shoulder the tiny mark of an inverted cross stood out, livid and colorless. There was a bench against one wall, and the bearers laid their pitiful burden upon it and turned away. Very gently, Ramsay lifted the heavy strands of hair from her face and stared into the dark, sightless eyes. In the first instant of his looking, the shock was too great to register properly. Then, realization swept upon him, and relief. The face turned so blindly toward him was the face of that dark, strange woman of the night before. He turned quietly to the uneasy men. "This is not my wife," he said. He knew by the quick, sidelong glances they exchanged that they thought him mad. One after another turned away from him. "Don't you know this woman?" he cried. "I tell you, she is the one who let us in last night." Samuels looked down at the pale face. "She's not from hereabouts. I'd know if she was." Perhaps in that instant Ramsay did go a little mad. Blank, futile walls seemed to be crowding upon him, crushing all thought, all power of reasoning. He sank onto a chair in a corner and sat with his face pressed into the cold dampness of his hands. As the long moments slid away, it seemed to him that something hateful and malevolent was crowding itself into his consciousness. He steeled his mind against its onslaught, but the sense of a malicious shadow encroaching upon his reason persisted. He began to see with an intense clarity that he knew would be the last before the oblivion of madness swept down upon him, unless, by the strength of his own will, he could overthrow the menace. Drunkenly, he staggered to his feet and snatched up the heavy cylinder of the smoking lamp. "Get out!" he cried. "All of you!" And he advanced upon the roomful, waving the lamp like a vengeful torch. At once, the pressure upon his brain subsided. The people of Loon Mountain faded from the room, and Ramsay knew the thing that was required of him if he was to save himself and reach Linda. He must be as cunning as the dark forces leagued against him. Never again must he give way to despair, thus opening a doorway to all evil. And he must fight alone. By some strange intuition, he knew that all the mountainside was against him. Little men like Samuels with blurred and shifty eyes, crowding their lies upon him, driving him with a slow, devilish persistence until his mind would abandon its last outpost, and they would be rid of him forever. They knew the identity of that tragic figure well enough. Of that he was certain. But they sought to bemuse him with their cunning until his reason recoiled so that he would take the dead woman and return to the world a chattering simpleton, unaware that Linda remained behind. Lamp in hand, Ramsay crossed the room and lifted the cloth from the face of the woman who lay upon the bench. How terrible she was in the bed, how bitterly beautiful. He stood for minutes, staring down upon her utter pallor, as if by the very force of his gaze he would draw out the secret, the dark mystery, from the languor of death. Who was she? How came Linda's gown upon her bruised body? And what was the meaning of that mark upon her shoulder? Where lay the key to this entanglement of Linda's life and hers? Overcoming a certain repugnance, he lifted a strand of hair that shrouded her shoulder and bent close above the mark. It was indeed the duplicate of the cross which Linda bore upon her upper arm. He allowed the hair to glide from his fingers absently, and was startled to see the woman's head twist suddenly to one side. It was the weight of the hair, he told himself, but the movement sent a chill of horror through his veins. It was as though the woman on the bench had, by some horrible power, twisted her head in order to stare past him with her wide, dead gaze. He followed the direction of that stare with his own eyes, fascinated in spite of himself. It was then he saw the rifle, half shadowed by the open door which led to the hall. He crossed the room in an instant and snatched it up, his mind clear, his body ready for action. The feel of the weapon gave him back a sense of reality, brought release from the frenzy that had come down upon him with his first sight of Linda's empty bed. The gun was unloaded, but there must be ammunition about the house. Once armed, he would not be afraid to venture into the mysteries of Loon Mountain. Somewhere out in the smother of darkness, Linda was waiting for him to come to her help. He had failed her long enough. But there was no ammunition to be found. He recalled then the silver bullet that Linda had placed beneath her pillow. That might serve, and it would be better to have a single shot in the gun than none at all. He stumbled up the stairs and down the long corridor to the bedroom. Eagerly, his fingers sought beneath the pillow. It was there. The cool silver made a talisman against the crowding shadow of the house as he went back down the stairs. He recalled Linda's words of the night before, less ready now to laugh them to scorn. Too many dark and unintelligible things had happened since then. The bullet had evidently been cast for this very rifle. He slipped it into the chamber and then went out into the waiting silence of Loon Mountain. Fog again. An undulating world of fog that twined slimy great tentacles about him, thrusting him back and down with a weight that pressed upon his spirit rather than his body, that tugged at his eyelids and raised within him so deep a desire for sleep that he could scarcely deny the impulse. He did deny it, however, with the new power that the knowledge of the loaded gun had given him. Straight up into the wet shrubbery of the mountainside he strode, and so heavy was the fog that the light from the open door behind him vanished instantly from view. For a little while he walked aimlessly, and then, in one of those rare moments when the fog rolled to a higher level, his eyes made out a difference in shading in the grey wall ahead, a flaking of yellow, as though a bonfire in some hollow cast a reflection upon the ceiling of fog. The gravel pit. He began to move more warily, and, as he advanced, the flicker of light grew clearer as it beat against the heavy atmosphere. The sound of a voice rose suddenly from the void ahead, chanting in a dreadful, unknown tongue. Forewarned, Ramsay dropped to his knees and squirmed across the wet ground, snake-like on his belly. Gone was his assurance now, gone all reason, gone too his desire for sleep. His flesh crept at the hideous tautophony of that voice, and a horror greater than any he had ever known swept through him. Involuntarily, he closed his eyes as he crept forward, dreading the moment when the veil would be torn from his vision, and he would look down upon the horror in the pit below. His groping fingers found the edge of a precipice, light flared against his closed lids, and an odor rose to his nostrils, an odor of rot, of death, and decay. He pressed his face into the clean, damp earth for a long moment. Then, with a quick lift of his head, he opened his eyes and fixed his gaze upon the scene below. A shudder passed through every limb, and cold drops of sweat trickled down the sides of his face. Always and forever the thing that was happening in the gravel pit would be etched upon his brain. There was no bonfire, as he had expected, but only the pinpoint flaring of a myriad candles, burning aslant in the stifling hollow of the pit, as they moved in a crawling, everlasting circle, carried backward by a multitude of black, shrouded figures. The circling candles were horrid enough, but it was the naked, obscene thing which lay in the center of the circle that set Ramsay shuddering with repugnance. Perhaps at one time it had been a man, but so hideously and unspeakably had it been mutilated that it was now a mere heap of quivering flesh stretched upon a sacrificial block. With an effort, Ramsay tore his eyes from the beastly sight, and his heart gave a stifling leap as he did so. Two figures had stepped from the obscurity beyond the circling lights. One of these was the man with the green, flat gaze. The other was Linda, white-robed and more dreadfully beautiful than he had ever seen her. About her naked shoulders, the black coils of her hair moved uncannily with a strange life of their own. Her eyes were set and staring, and in her extended hand she held a small black bowl, against the edges of which trembled a murky liquid. The man with the green eyes lifted a dark, thin hand, while the abominable voice in the background chanted on and on. "Drink," he commanded. Slowly, with unseeing eyes, the woman raised the bowl to her lips. in doing so, half turned
I haven't gone
the
anywhere.
evil gaze of the man at her side.
I haven't gone anywhere.
Ramsay's
Where are the
voice
big
grated
eyeballs?
from his throat in a harsh scream that he barely recognized as coming from his own lips. Linda! The woman started violently, so that liquid spurted from the bowl in her fingers and left a spatter of scarlet against her white robe. The gaze which commanded hers wavered not at all at the cry. The man's swarthy hand was still raised in its gesture of command. Drink, he repeated
That'll
softly.
work.
Again,
I
Ramsay
can change the
screamed.
angle of this.
Stop, or I'll shoot. The black figures in the pit ceased their backward circling for an instant, and he
Too
was
lumpy.
aware of faces tilted curiously toward him.
Maybe that one.
Faces he seemed to recognize.
Yeah, that one.
Samuel's bleared eyes and the faces of his mountain neighbors. Then the heads turned, and the low sound of a
Where is
dreadful
it?
laughter rose upon the night.
I shouldn't be listening to
So they
spooky
were
shit when I can't keep a hold of my own
against him,
shit.
These dwellers of
Eyeballs,
Lone Mountain.
horns.
This then was their reason for refusing to recognize
Start
the
cutting
dead.
things away.
They were banded together by a dreadful alliance, sworn to oppose his search for Linda. Was his gun impotent? Was he helpless against the malevolent power of the man in the pit below? Man, warlock. He raised the butt of the gun to his shoulder
I've not gone
and
anywhere.
rested the barrel upon the edge of the precipice. One shot only was allowed him. He dared not miss. Those below were paying no attention now, circling again in the eerie. Once more, Linda had lifted
not
the
gone
black
anywhere.
bolt to her lips. Ramsay sighted along the barrel. The shot crashed upon the hateful night, echoing from the side of the mountain to the valley and back again, silencing the monotony of the chanting voice. All
Where are
motion in
my
the pit
eyeballs?
ceased. All attention was fixed with incredulity upon the figure of the man within the circle of candlelight. For a moment, he stood there, staggering a little upon his feet. Then a dreadful metamorphosis began to take place, a transmutation too
There it is.
fearful for the eyes of man
Found
to
it.
witness. Ramsay hid his face against the damp earth, his ear to feet. When he dared to gaze once more into the pit below, he could see the flicker of 3 dying candles and the stained white robes of Linda. Cautiously, he slipped down the slide of lifted the unconscious girl in his arms. As he did so, a candle sputtered out, and in the light of the remaining 2 stuck upright in the ground, he saw again the horror of that torn thing upon the slab of the sacrifice block. He pressed Linda tightly in his arms and went round the object, only to thrust one foot into a mouldering obscenity that crawled below the block. He drew back with a stifled cry, and in the dying candlelight he glimpsed 2 flat, greenish eyes that shimmered faintly from an ooze of grey and jelly-like matter. Somehow, he fled back to the fog-filled world above the pit. Somehow, with Linda in his arms, he stumbled along the mountainside, past the black outline of the building with its gaping, lamplit doorway, back to the car and the road. Linda lay against the seat, pale to her very lips, but conscious now. As the familiar jolting along the mountainside began again, she began to talk very softly, half to herself. She was my sister, my twin. She knew because of the mark. Before she died, she told me everything. We were dedicated when we were born, dedicated to that. But because our mother was good, she tried to get us away from Loon Mountain. Myself they never found, but he caught my sister and brought her back. She didn't know what he was. No one knew. Only that he was something evil that had crept up from some dark place in the earth. But my sister was not obedient to the count. In her heart she was good, like our mother who had died because of her goodness. And in the end, my sister died too. They could afford to fling her over the pit once they had me to take her place. By some instinct, Ramsay kept the car to the road while he listened, until at last the fog thinned and rolled back upon the mountains. Far ahead, a hint of grey light crawled up the sky. Linda sighed and closed her eyes. When she opened them again, the shadow of horror had begun to fade. "I'm free now," she went on softly. "I couldn't be free before, because he was calling me. Wherever I went, he was there, at the back of my mind, calling." Against her bare shoulder, the faintest tint of rose gave evidence of a mark that was like a tiny, inverted cross. Ramsay slipped one arm about her and drew her close to him on the seat. "Look," he whispered, "far ahead along the sky. Dawn, my darling."
True fly, don't bother me.
If you enjoyed listening today, be sure to subscribe to the channel by hitting the red subscribe button below.
I don't know if this is going to work.
After doing so, click the bell icon next to the subscribe button to receive new content notifications. If you'd like to support our work and receive exclusive perks, consider becoming a channel member by clicking the join button below. To support us in other ways, see the video description for links to our Bandcamp and Patreon pages, our merch store over at Teespring, and further information relating to our releases on Audible, iTunes, and Spotify. And until next time.
This will not work, but I just need it there for a minute. Yeah, fuck it. I think I'm done with spooky stories for a while. I need something a little bit different. It's good, but, I mean, getting tired of it now. I need something poppy. Try some food theory. There we go.
Little Caesars just released a brand new pizza to celebrate the upcoming Fantastic Four movie. It's actually really cool. It's a 4-quadrant pizza, each one with its own toppings to represent the titular characters. I was so excited to try this thing out until I took a closer look and I realized they got it all wrong. So I'm gonna fix it. Hello, Internet. Welcome to Food Theory, where no chain can have fun because I am too much of a nerd. This is Little Caesars' newest creation, celebrating the Fantastic Four in all of their the third time's the charm glory. It's actually super cool. It's a 4-quadrant pizza, each one with its individual toppings that represent each of the individual characters. But when you take a closer look at it, through the eyes of someone that spent more time reading comic books than making friends as a child, you'll realize they don't represent the characters at all. So I am planning on writing this wrong, but I can't really do it myself. See, my pizza making knowledge tops out at getting one of those tubes and pressing the spoon to it and getting scared when it pops open every single time. So I called up a friend of mine who is a pizza making expert here in Miami and decided to intrude on his Sundays so that he could show me the ropes in order to correct Little Caesars pizza. But before I can do any of that, I need to do 2 things. 1, get my hands on the actual pizza itself. And 2, I gotta walk before I can run. So today I'm gonna be making 3 pizzas. The first pizza is gonna be the simplest. It's gonna represent one superhero. The superhero, Superman. Then we're gonna move on to another ensemble
Deadpool.
most people are familiar with these days, the Avengers. But with this pizza, we're not concerned about the 4 quadrants. We're gonna have all the toppings spread throughout the pizza before we move on to my new and improved Fantastic Four 4-quadrant pizza. We're gonna pick up Little Caesars on our way to the pizza expert so that we can get started on this delicious adventure. Mwah! Okay, so we have the infamous Fantastic Four pizza in front of me, and it's honestly beautiful. Like, they have it perfectly in like 4 different quadrants. I'm like actually really pissed at like the lack of effort they put into everyone that wasn't the Thing and Johnny. Because like, what are these 2 supposed to be? I don't understand. But we're gonna do a taste test and see if they at least invoke the characters. So let's start with Ben Grimm, aka The Thing, aka the Orange Rock Man.
Okay,
The
it's
bacon
now
feels a
back
little
on step
extra.
forward.
I understand the sausage. I like the sausage. That's something
I really
that
wish there
might keep.
wasn't,
I think
like,
this was probably
blades
the
all
best
over the floor
executed
now,
one.
but
Then let's
hey.
go to the Human Torch. You have jalapenos and pepperoni, which jalapenos, ha ha ha, we get it. It's very obvious. Not the hottest you could go. It's not even that spicy. I'm gonna say the one that with no toppings is Invisible Woman, aka Sue Storm. It's just Little Caesar pizza, which slaps. You need something else. You can't just say cheese pizza and oh, there's no toppings, it's invisible. Lack of effort. C minus. Nothing about this half of the pizza screams Fantastic Four, but it can't just be me. I'm gonna bring Claudia in and tell me what she thinks about the flavor profile, because like she doesn't know anything about comics, so that's the only one thing she can do, which is eat. You may notice we're in a very rustic looking place. This is not our apartment. We are in the home of our pizza expert for today.
I really like that one. The sausage is a good touch. When the crust is so thick, you need more than just cheese.
Sausage really does end up looking like rock, so that might be something that we have to see. Does this invoke smartest man alive to you?
0%.
Does this invoke someone who can stretch their limbs?
Oh, there we go.
0%.
Yeah, exactly. So, I'm gonna finish eating this because I haven't had lunch. Then we're gonna move on and get the adventure started. You don't want to.
That's just dumb enough that I got it
So,
that good that
without
quick.
further ado, I'm gonna bring on my expert, who has asked to remain completely anonymous, so we will not be using his real name. Instead, I'm gonna be making up a fake name like Billy. Billy, come on to my show. Hi, everybody. Welcome, Billy, to Food Theory. What makes pizza dough so hard for so many people, in your experience?
The pizza dough is what makes the entire pizza. So there's not like a lot of hard rules when you make pizza. There's a lot of things that you can vary, like sauces, toppings, whatever. But dough is what makes or breaks your pizza. Pizza dough is like a living organism. It's got yeast in it.
Suck it, vegans. I eat pizza because it's not alive.
That's the time-consuming part. The yeast needs to eat the sugars in the dough and then convert that into alcohol and CO2. CO2 is what makes your dough like bubble up.
We get alcohol in pizza?
Not enough to drink.
A boy can hope. Thank you. If you want, you can start getting the oven ready, and I'll see you in a second. I gotta tell them about the first pizza we're gonna make. Pizza number 1, Superman. How in the world do you make a pizza that honors and represents the character that everyone knows and loves? The first of the many, many superheroes. Well, there's a couple of ways to go about it. He's from Krypton, he's super strong, he's got the classic blue and red, yellow colors in his costume. But here's the thing. Superman is by all intents and purposes a god, but what makes him so special is actually his humanity. So when making a pizza for him, I want to honor that. I want to convey Superman's humanity. And what better way to do that than by looking at his farm boy origin? The first and main ingredient of this pizza is going to be corn, something that he would have been very familiar with and surrounded by in his upbringing, and represents the farmland of Smallville, Kansas. What we're gonna do is roast the corn like he would do with his heat vision and give it a little bit more oomph in the flavor. Now, that corn is going to be fairly sweet, so we need to balance it out with something nice and salty, and there's no better thing to do that with than with ham. Kansas loves its pork, and Superman would have no doubt been having that nice, delicious meat growing up on the farm. But we're not done yet. We still have to pay some sort of homage to his alien superhero alter identity, Superman. And the best way to do that is actually with kind of a twofer ingredient, sunflower seeds. Superman gets his powers from the yellow sun. That's what makes him Superman in our world. But Clark Kent, also growing up on the farm in Smallville, would have been surrounded by sunflowers. So what we're gonna do is roast some sunflower seeds and sprinkle them onto the top of the pizza to add a little bit of texture and a little bit of an earthy flavor to it. But we're not done yet, because
Hi, sorry
can't
about that.
talk
Just
about
noticed you. Hi, how are
Superman and the
you?
things that make him
How's your day
without
going?
talking about his famous weakness, kryptonite. How do we convey this glowing green rock that makes Superman weak in the knees? And the answer, once you get to thinking about it, is pretty obvious. Cilantro. And that's because there's a good portion of the population for which cilantro is a weakness. See, there are some people with a special and very specific olfactory
How's your day
receptor
doing?
gene, the OR6A2. People that have a variant of this specific gene literally taste soap whenever they eat cilantro. You watching may taste soap when you eat cilantro, and that's because you have a variant of this OR6A2 gene that makes you have a specifically heightened sensitivity to aldehyde. So adding cilantro would be perfect, because a lot of people would be able to eat this pizza, taste the cilantro, and think, herbaceous. But if Clark Kent would bite into it and taste soap, it would ruin the entire experience. So let's get cracking on the pizza. I want to point out once again the saint-like patience of Billy, allowing me to disturb his one day off of completely awful and inappropriate jokes.
Do you want to be part of this?
Beautiful. Reminds me of my beautiful, I won't say it.
Yeah.
Reminds me of my wife. He hates me.
Yeah, what was our dough ball? We're gonna lubricate the dough ball. It's not. It's dry lubricant. It is cornmeal.
So, what is the point?
The point
Uh-oh.
of the
Where'd the
cornmeal.
where'd the ear go?
This dough's very
I don't want to do this by hand, so I'm just gonna. I don't want to do this by machine, so I'm just gonna do it by hand.
This is a way to stretch the dough.
Something like that.
To the back of my hands and just kind of roll it around. And gravity is pulling the dough down from the
I'm
bottom.
not going to.
I see.
So in order to keep it even, I'm rotating it around and around, and you can see that it's like starting to stretch out.
So now we're gonna move it onto
The peel.
the peel.
I floured up the peel so that when we launch it into the pizza, it doesn't stick to the peel.
Slides off. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but this was flour. Okay.
flour.
So why not cornmeal for this then?
Cornmeal doesn't stick to the peel as well. Flour leaves like a residue on the peel.
So can we start with the
Yes.
ingredients here?
Yes.
Okay.
So
let me.
we'll sauce it up.
Alright.
Boom.
Oh,
Weirdly
bones.
optimistic about this. Oh, that's delicious. So here we have the sunflower seeds, which are shelled already. I want to really finish up this ham. I think we're ready.
Yeah, just open the door there.
Oh yeah. Oh man. Oh, look at that. We got the final product right in front of us. So as a recap, charred corn on top as a homage to his Kansas farm upbringing. We have ham because it's a nice hearty, I feel like down to earth, protein and meal that he would have. Then we have the sunflower seeds scattered all along that have gotten a nice little bit of toasting. And finally, his kryptonite, the cilantro. I luckily don't have the gene that makes it taste like soap. I'm sure if Superman himself were to come here and try it, he'd be like, oh, gross, but only because of the cilantro, the rest of the pizza's super good. Oh, I wish the cilantro wasn't on this so I could enjoy it fully. So, one bite, everybody knows the rules. Sunflowers have a very strong taste that I did not see coming. What comes through immediately is the corn, which is really, really good and very, very sweet. Even Finn wants some. I know. The cilantro adds a little bit. Honestly, this feels like a weirdly Kansas pizza. It can't just be me. Claudia's got to come. And
More pizza. The dough is really good. Well,
that was karma for not first complimenting my topping game
that
here.
was one of the hams. Like, I almost just died. I like the corn a lot. This
Ah,
is so
fucker.
good. I would like more ham.
Does this invoke Superman for you?
A little bit. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You don't have to lie. It's fine. How would you rate it on a scale of 1 to Fantastic Four?
3.2.
I'll take a 3.2. We need to get Billy back on here. After all, he did make the pizza.
That corn was a great idea.
I'm telling you, corn
That
might be the
fucking
next
hurt,
topic for
man.
pizza.
Why the hell did that hurt so
Dough
much?
is Good. Not glazing here, but there's been times that I've messed up the dough. Cilantro was a great choice. The ham is fine.
In your opinion, from Dr. Doom to Fantastic Four, how would you rate this?
2.5. I think we can shoot higher.
I think that's solid. Now, I feel like I should remind everyone that much like Whose Line Is It Anyway, these points don't really matter. At the end of the day, it's pretty subjective. Our goal isn't making the tastiest pizza, but the most lore-accurate pizza. How good it is more like the cherry.
Ah.
With that said,
Oh, that
Superman
hurt.
showed us a lot about unexpected flavors. And now, it's time for pizza number 2. The friggin' Avengers. How? We have 6 characters in the OG MCU Avengers. Yes, we are doing the OG MCU Avengers, because if we did the comic Avengers, I would have to put both ants and wasps on my pizza. I'm not going to do that. So we have 6 characters. The Hulk, Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, Black Widow, and Hawkeye. The Hulk is pretty self-explanatory. He's big, he's green, he's a big punch of flavor. We're going to do a nice basil pesto drizzle with that strong green flavor. When it comes to Iron Man, everybody knows that Tony Stark is feisty, sassy, and clad in that red and gold armor. What we're going to do to represent him is a sriracha drizzle to counteract that herbaceousness of the basil and pesto and show a little bit of Tony Stark's fiery attitude. Captain America. Red, white, and blue. Say less. We got the white from the mozzarella, red from the red onions, and blue cheese crumbles to round off the Star-Spangled Man at a time. Thor is where it gets a little more complicated. We're gonna add lingonberry underneath the cheese to balance the acidity of the sauce and to pay homage to his Scandinavian origin.
That's pretty different.
Oh, I'd lose my head if it wasn't attached. Where the fuck is the white thread? Hey, look, it's yellow. It's close enough.
Fun together. Excel, do what feels fresh.
In Origins. Now, we have Black Widow, and I think that one is fairly obvious. Black Widow, Black Olives. Hawkeye is the bane of my existence. Because what do you do for a man that shoots arrows? And here's the thing. You have triangle shapes of the arrowheads that we want to convey in this pizza. But what this pizza is really lacking is a little bit of texture. What we're gonna do is get Doritos Minis and add one on every slice so that you get a nice little arrowhead and a crunch of texture with that very first bite. God, I'm loving how this pizza's turning out. Let's get to it. So these two that we're dealing with now are slightly bigger than the first one.
I don't think I'll be doing this one again. Unless it, like, really gets popular. Oh my god, it's the first thing I sold.
Apply dry, grainy lube. Important life lessons.
Yeah, you manipulate before. Just go in a circular motion.
Ooh.
You're wanting to push the dough out just a little bit.
I really shouldn't be doing this because I'm probably gonna mess it up. This was fun. That was a fun experience for me. I've learned a lot. All right, so this is where it's gonna be tricky, and it's gonna be a matter of like proportion, especially the lingonberry. It sure smells. I don't know why I thought this was gonna be a good idea. All right, so now we are gonna put a little less sauce. Oh, this doesn't look good. So this, remember, is the white part of the red, white, and blue for Captain America. So we're gonna put smoked Gouda for Thor's smokiness. Also, because Chris Hemsworth is hot. We got the blue cheese crumbles for Captain America's red, white, and blue. This is gonna be the hardest thing, because blue cheese is very strong. Black Widow, Black Olives, that was an ugly one. Can't have any ugly olives. This is ScarJo we're talking about. Oh man, our team up pizza right now is looking fine. Despite not wanting to ruin the dough, I felt like I was doing.
I think I'm just about done for the night. I'm pretty tired.
You know, essential stuff. 3, 2, 1, yeah. The
I
trick
didn't get
here is
a
gonna be
1,
making
2,
sure that the
3, 4
lingonberry doesn't
finish, but the rest I just need to wait for everything to dry and then varnish tomorrow.
Balancing flavors here that this should come together really well. And we're gonna top it all off really yummily with pesto, sriracha, and one other thing that I forgot.
The arrowheads.
Thank you. Listen, all this pizza is getting to me. All right, don't judge me. Okay, so the smells coming off of this thing sure are an ensemble. Nothing to it but to do it. I'm so nervous about the lingonberry. Wait, but actually? I think we took lessons from the first pizza and we applied them, and I think we learned.
I'm really excited about the lingonberry.
Yeah.
Because I'm a sucker for sweet and salty.
Yeah. You're welcome for the ASMR there. Now let me whisper in your ear. Tell you something that you might like to hear. Wait till you see my crust. So how are you?
I love the lingonberry. It's just the right amount. It's not overpowering.
Adds a little sweetness.
Oh my god, the sriracha. It just hit.
Oh,
My
she's-
eyes watering.
Yeah, you're seeing 5 dimensions now.
The ingredients are all friends.
They fight a little bit, but it's just like the Avengers.
Anyway, you know what I'm not really tasting though? The blue cheese, I just realized.
You can blame that on the person who cut the pizza.
You know what I think it is? Your drizzle skills are not it.
What does that have to do with anything?
I was really hungry in the first pizza. I went a little crazy with the 3.2. I think the first one was like a 2.7.
I'm done.
My camera tracker
I'm done.
score.
This is a 3.2.
I'm too tired.
Yeah, no takesies.
This is going somewhere. I'm not exactly sure where, but it's going somewhere. I have no idea what to do with its head, so I'm working on it. Alright, I'm going to say goodnight. Thank you for everyone who stopped by and hung out for a while. And I will bid you all evening, and I'll see you in the next one. Oh yeah, what do we do tonight? Let me show you. Got that guy, and we got this guy, and we got Peter Rabbit summoning things. He still's got to dry. Minnie Mouse is Minnie. And I got this little green jackalope. Okay, might need a bow. Stash jar, another jackalope, and another jackalope. And I did a bunch of other little things that are just kind of menial shit that doesn't really result in anything until later, but it's not getting any better down here. Alright, thank you guys. You have a good night, and I'll see you in the next one.